The weirdness of the music production process. What is it all about? Why is it weird? It's only recent that I've come to realize that even close pals just have no idea about this process, that it's broken into 4 major sort of steps, and what some of the advantages of that process might be for us. Stuck with the Bun. Hello, I'm the Bun. Welcome to the channel. This is a show all about things that you are stuck on, that I am stuck on, that I've been stuck on, and hopefully we will get unstuck. Today's show is all about the weirdness of the music production process. While there are finer details more specific to the super low guitar stuff, we're not going to go there today. I've come to realize that many solo creators are just not aware of the 4-step process that meticulous, slick productions often follow. 4 steps with their own focus, philosophy, and workflow to maximize the results at every step. For many self-taught solo creators, the process is actually no process. Just sit down in front of a rad DAW with a sick guitar, a crushing modeler, a ripping drum program, and get started on a track, and then just go until it's done. The difference starts to become apparent at some point. You know, we're realizing it's like, yeah, I have decent gear. I know basically how to use it. What's the difference? What's making the difference? And you know, self-taught has many advantages, you know, especially in the areas of creativity, innovation, the sort of F it, let's do it kind of attitude. That's like, those things are huge. Maybe the biggest downside is just not knowing the difference, the simplest differences that separate us from a major studio production, a major studio process. There's a bunch of sort of workflow things about a major studio process that can benefit us. It's not always the gear or the fancy room that makes the difference. Sometimes it's just the process, the order of operations, and the workflow. I got started in the 90s in big studios, on big productions, and I got to see firsthand how all this stuff works. You know, what are the workflows? What makes the difference? Strangely, since that time, I just assumed that everybody knew about this. I felt like I was the dumb guy at the time, and I'm like, oh, of course. It's only recent that I've come to realize that even close pals just have no idea about this process, that it's broken into 4 major sort of steps. What are the 4 steps of the production process? You know, if we break it down, let's break it down. Thank you to all the patrons and YouTube members. These are the people who brought you this episode. If you'd like to become either of those things, you can find the links down below. Number 1 is the writing and pre-production process. Number 2, recording and production. Number 3, mixing. Number 4, mastering and deliverables. Writing and pre-production. What is that all about? Writing and pre-production is kind of messy. It's where all the thrashing happens. Tons of clips, tons of takes, tons of ideas, all kind of strewn about, trying out a lot of stuff. We are not all that concerned with perfect takes and tones. We're here to write. We're here to get good ideas down. The less toil with techie crap, the better. You know, getting into that sort of Zen creative flow. That's the whole point of the writing and pre-production process. Sorting out and thrashing about before we get to the studio to really record things. Or in this case, to really sit down and focus on final takes and all of that stuff. Final takes and tones. What do we got to do to get ready for final takes and tones? Advantages of the writing and pre-production process. You know, the focus is 100% on composition, creativity, and crafting. That's what you're there for, sorting everything out before you do the final commit. You know, just sort it all out, get it all down, make sure everything is sealed up. Essentially building the master plan for the final recording. So recording and production. The next step. We're ready to go. We've got everything sorted out. We're gonna do our final recording and our final production. This can happen in the existing session from the writing session. That's the way that I do it, but a lot of people start with a new session. If you're gonna work with the old writing session, copy the relevant tracks forward and save a copy. In recording and production, we are gonna redo everything necessary. If it's not absolutely necessary, you can keep it from the writing session. But usually you're gonna redo everything. I redo everything. This is where we focus on really good feel, great sounds, and final arrangements. All the final little bits and details. We're gonna get them in there. Hopefully everything we learned from pre-production is awesome and we're making great choices now at this phase. This is where we're making the final creative decisions on what is and is not needed to make the final composition and production shine. More tracks and layers does not mean better. Better is better. And if it's not better, it's gone. Get it out of there. In this phase, we're going to be recording everything on specific tracks according to the mix strategy. We have a mix strategy in mind. We're gonna record everything in an organized fashion, and we're gonna plan for the mix, because we don't want to fix when we get to the mix. We want to record for the mix. Big advantages of this phase is it focuses on the awesome performance, the tweaking, the arrangement, the playing with awesome feel, nerding out on the tech details, getting sick tones. That's what we're here to do in this phase. That is the primary focus. That's all we're doing. Mixing, highly elusive to a lot of people for some reason. I get a lot of messages about mixing, and I'm like, there's a million videos on mixing, but maybe none specific to the kind of stuff that I do and you do. I'm not sure. Let me know about that. Mixing is often the same session as the recording session, usually. I always save a copy anyway. I always want to be able to go back to my recording session before it was mixed. So what's happening in the mix? This is where we're getting all the tracks to sound super rad together through level and pan position. We're gonna apply effects to control elements if we want. So EQ, compression, limiting, all that kind of stuff. Various elements of the mix, like we need to control it. After controlling the mix, maybe we want to apply spatial effects if needed. So reverb, ambience, and delay. Once we have everything balanced out, controlled, and spatially beautiful, maybe we want to apply effects to sweeten the overall mix. So whatever works for sweetening, you just grab whatever you need to sweeten it up, if it needs sweetening. After all that, we might apply some automation. And it's only if needed. You know, if we want to do a dynamic kind of mix, volume, pan, and effects kind of thing, like things moving around. Once we have all that sorted, we want to mix down, render, bounce, export. You hear all these things. What do they all mean? They all mean the same thing. We're gonna mix down or export or render or bounce our track down to a high resolution mix master. It's gonna be a stereo file. Common settings for a mix master is gonna be 24-bit, 44.1 kilohertz, WAV or AIFF file format. Stereo, of course. So what are the advantages to the mix process being isolated like this? It allows us to focus on the sonic, spatial, and dynamic relationships of things. We're not playing at the same time. We're not writing at the same time. We're just focused on that part of what's going on with our material. Mastering and deliverables. What's going on? Mastering also very elusive to people. Very interesting. I feel like there's a million videos on this, but I guess people just don't find them. So mastering, it happens in its own session. It's a brand new session, and it's only a stereo track. Stereo track and the master bus, and that's it. So there are about 6 things we can do in mastering. Big note here is you only need to do what the file needs, what the material needs, what the music needs. You don't have to do all of these steps. You just do what you need to do. Those things are prepping the file, controlling the file, sweetening the file, widening the file, loudening the file. Is loudening a word? Loudening. Very briefly, what is happening at each one of these stages. In the prep section, we're gonna cut sub bass, excess mids, we're gonna trim the head and the tail for noise. You know, this all happens on the actual track, and beyond this, nothing is gonna happen on the track. Everything after this is gonna happen on the master bus. Control. This is probably gonna happen on every mastering session. In this stage of controlling the material, we might apply dynamics like compression, multi-band compression, saturation, EQ, like granular subtractive EQ, just to balance everything out, get control of the material. After controlling the file, we might want to sweeten the file, you know, adding some EQ, adding some saturation for flavor, EQ, texture, that kind of stuff. Once we've sweetened it and we're like, that's a sweet file, maybe we want to widen it. In widening the material, that also includes narrowing the material. And what am I talking about? That means making the bass, the low frequency mono, really center, and then kind of spreading the mix out as we go, spreading the master out as we go. So the extreme treble will be pushed probably just slightly past the standard stereo field. You have to be really careful with widening. That's a whole nother episode, but yeah, don't go too crazy with the widening. Next step is louder. You know, there's a lot of talk about too loud or not loud enough, whatever. Make it as loud as you want it to be. How do we make it louder? With compression, saturation, limiting, and clipping. Oddly enough, clipping. We're gonna clip it on purpose, maybe. Depends on the material. But yeah, people will clip the file on purpose. They will use purpose-made clippers to do so. A lot of people don't know about this, but yeah, it comes from the old days of clipping certain A to D converters on the way back in. Analog out into an A to D converter that clipped in a nice way. I think it was the 88,000s by Apogee, maybe not, but that's what my memory serves. Final stage is making it louder, and typically people are going to do this in very, very small amounts at many little steps. And if you want to get it really loud, but yeah, make it as loud as you want to make it. There are things to give up if you want to make it really loud. It's all up to you. Final step here is delivery. People don't talk about delivery with mastering, but the deliverables, deliverables can be up to 2 file formats, maybe more depending on the material you're making, but usually it's 2, which is a WAV file and an MP3. WAV files are uncompressed audio, and MP3s are compressed audio. The stereo WAV file that we're gonna make here is stereo, of course, and it is usually 16-bit, 44.1 kilohertz, and yeah, WAV. We can use these files for CD audio, making vinyl records, making cassette tapes, making stuff, and we're probably gonna distribute that to all of the big distributors for Spotify and all that kind of stuff, and even Bandcamp. If you're distributing files on your own website, maybe MP3s is something you want to distribute. If you're distributing files for other people just to listen to, send MP3 files. For MP3 files, the file we want to deliver is going to be stereo, 16-bit, 44.1 kilohertz, and 320 kilobits per second or 256 kilobits per second, something higher. The biggest advantage of a separated, focused mastering session is sweetening the final product, the sonic bow of the present, the sonic icing on the cake, making it sonically tasty and loud. Thanks again to everybody with me at Patreon and YouTube memberships. Thank you to everyone who has ever been with me there. If Patreon or YouTube memberships is not your thing, there is music, downloads, and streams. There is merch. There is creative assets. All the links are down below. Thank you very much to everyone who has helped thus far. I'd love to know if any of this is new to you, and what does your process currently look like? Does any of this sound like it might be good? Is it stuff you already knew about? Yeah, where are you at? Seems like a lot of people are not aware of these things, even though the information is plentiful out there. But I guess it depends on being able to ask the questions. If you don't know what questions to ask, it may not lead you to the right answers. So hopefully this is useful to people, and yeah, that you see some immediate benefits from it. If you're looking for a quick little starting place for some of this stuff, you know, I have those Reaper drum sessions. Not only does it come with MIDI and whatnot for, you know, cool wetlands grooves, it's a starting drum mix. Yeah, that might be a starting place. The link to that is down below. That's it for this video. I hope you liked this video, and I hope to see you in the next video.